Hi everybody, how are you? My name is Anisma Tunga and I'm so excited because I get to do my first video. I've always wanted to do this and I decided why not come here and study with you guys. It's gonna be exciting, I'm excited, so let's do it. We're gonna be focusing on the pelvis, right? So the pelvis is made of two hip bones, which are these bones here. Oh my god, my pointer. These bones right here. And then it is made of the sacral bone, which is attached to the coccyx, which I'll show you a little later. And the sacrum and the coccyx, are part of the vertebrae column. So anterior, this is posteriorly, and then anteriorly, the hip bones are joined together at the pubic symphysis. So these bones have got different parts of them that can be labeled, that can be identified on them. They form joints. So it's going to be exciting because I'm going to separate each bone and study each bone and parts of it that are important, where ligaments attach, muscles attach. The famous gluteus maximus actually attaches on this bone, and the minimus as well. So we're gonna focus on all those parts and by looking at the bones individually. So on the hip bone, since there are two, we'll focus on one. Maybe we'll pick the left one or the right one, but then we'll still focus on that. And then also like explain how we're going to notify this is the left pelvic hip bone or the right one, because we have two, right? And then, which is very important, by the way, because you would want to know which femur is going to attach there. Is it the right femur or the left femur? Or even when you're labeling it, if they ask you to identify the whole bone, where they say, identify this bone, you need to know if you are identifying a left hip bone or a right hip bone. It's very important. So we're going to go into that and I'm excited. Let's do it. Okay. Right. So we're going to look at the bones that are made by this bone, the pelvic bone in total. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, there's the anteriorly, we have the pubic symphysis, and then posteriorly we have the sacroiliac joint, which is the joint between the sacrum and the ilium, which is part of the hip bone. So our hip bone is divided into three. These three bones fuse together to form the acetabulum, which is this bony structure here, which is a joint where the femur will attach. Okay, so these three bones form the acetabulum, also fuse together to make the hip bone. So this whole part here that looks like a wing, yeah, like a pan, like I don't know what you want to describe it as, but personally, it looks like an elephant to me. Um, it looks like an elephant's ear specifically. It's so this is then called the ilium. Okay, when this is the ilium, going down here from the acetabulum to the pubic symphysis, and then to that little notch that is found on the ischial pubic ramus. So this becomes the inferior ischial, the inferior pubic ramus, and this becomes the superior pubic ramus, and then this becomes the ischial ramus. Yeah. Um, Basically, that's about it. So the acetabulum is a fusion of all three bones. Okay. So now we're going to discuss the hip bone alone. Okay, so this is our hip bone, and this is where for us to know which side is which. So this is our anterior side, and this is our posterior side. How do we know that? We know this by the pubic symphysis. Okay. So this is our pubic symphysis, which faces our anterior body, like the anterior part of our body. And posteriorly, this is where we find our sacrum. Remember we said the sacrum is part of the vertebrae column, which is part of the posterior surface, yeah? The sacroiliac joint, which is where the sacrum and the ilium join on the auricular surface, right? Which is this. This is the auricular surface here. Okay, so we're going to focus on labeling this, naming each part. Okay, not each, but any part, the parts I remember from this. Remember, as I mentioned, I'm studying. So, okay, so this here is our iliac tuberosity, okay? And down here is our posterior superior iliac spine. If you say it fast, you're bound to mess up. So I always take my time and say posterior superior iliac spine. Because fast, posterior superior iliac spine, I know, you mess up. And this is called the auricula. Auricula is where the sacrum and the iliac joint is formed, the sacroiliac joint, yeah? So it's called the auricula. And then this is basically the iliac crest, right? Although the tuberculum of the iliac crest is posterior, so you can see it posteriorly. This then becomes our iliac fossa, and this, if there's a posterior superior iliac spine, there's bound to be an anterior, right? So this becomes our anterior superior iliac spine, right? Anterior superior iliac spine sounds easier to say than posterior. I don't know why posterior is a bit difficult. And then this one is our anterior inferior iliac spine. So there is a superior, there's definitely an inferior. So this is our anterior inferior iliac spine. And then from there, we have our arcuate line. So the arcuate line then changes name to pectineal line. Somewhere around here, it becomes the pectineal line. And then what else can I label? Oh, okay, basically the body of the ilium. This is the body of the ilium. From the ilium, we can now name the, let's go to the ischium, okay? So on the ischium, this is the lesser sciatic notch, okay? Remember the sciatic nerve? Yeah, that should tell you something. This is a lesser sciatic notch, and as I mentioned before, this is our inferior ischial tuberosity. This is practically what we sit on, literally what we sit on, okay? And then this up to, remember the notch is the ischial ramus, the ramus of the ischium, or the ischial ramus, yeah? And then superior to that, on the same ramus, is the pubic ramus. Okay, so, and then here, we have our pubic symphysis, as mentioned before. And then we've got our pubic crest just above there, and our pubic tubercle just somewhere there as well. This is the superior pubic ramus. And then from the superior pubic ramus, we've got our obturator groove in there. You see like a circle there? That's not even a circle. Like a line showing inside there. Yeah, that's our obturator groove. And then from there, we have our iliac tuberosity here. Yeah. And then the body of the pubis is practically just here. Yeah, that's the body of the pubis. Okay, so now we're going to look at the posterior aspect of the hip bone, okay? So basically, as you can see, this is now the acetabulum that I was telling you about. So this being the acetabulum, and this is where the bones I was explaining fuse. So from here all the way to this is where we have the pubic bone fusing, and then from there to somewhere here is where the ischial bone joins with the ilium. Okay, so let's label what we can. So this is the anterior inferior iliac spine. This is the anterior superior iliac spine. And then I think I mentioned them when we're looking at the anterior aspect. Now we're looking at the posterior. So this then becomes our gluteal surface, okay? Because this is where the gluteal maximus, gluteal minimus, gluteal medius bones practically just comes in a touch, okay? So this is now our gluteal surface. Or basically, yeah, this is where the posterior gluteal muscles join, okay? Our iliac tuberculum, which is practically this edgy, yeah, this edgy part. Okay, so this then becomes our posterior inferior iliac spine. Remember this posterior inferior iliac spine that I was telling you is very difficult to pronounce really quickly, and this is our posterior superior iliac spine. Remember, whenever I said we hear the word posterior inferior, it means there's an anterior and there's also a superior. So this is the posterior superior iliac spine, right? And then this becomes this one here, and then this becomes our posterior inferior iliac spine. And then from there, this is the ischial spine, right? Our ischial tuberosity here. Our pubic symphysis is this one, this side. Our superior pubic ramus is this one. Our inferior pubic ramus is here. Our ischial ramus is here. The other thing we can literally see prominently that I almost forgot is this part, which is our ischial body. Yeah, just where the ischial spine is, our ischial body is very prominent. This is where we can actually see the ischial body, which is here. From the ischial tuberosity up here, this becomes our ischial body. So that's basically it about our hip bone, right? If I left out some things, please do highlight in the comments, but that's practically what I can remember. Now we're going to go straight into the sacrum, okay? So we're going to label as much as I can remember. So on the sacrum, the sacrum attaches to the L5 vertebral bone, which is right up here. And then it also attaches down here to the coccyx, okay? So if you remember our embryology very well, remember that the the sacrum, sorry, is a fusion of bones. So initially, these bones were 5 separate bones, but during ossification, they join and fuse and become one big bone. And when they fuse and become one big bone, anteriorly, they've got this part, okay? So this is the ala. Ala is a word that means wing, okay? And I'm not sure if it's Greek or I don't know, Hebrew or whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure where the word came from, but ala means wing. So this is the ala, or the wing of the sacrum, okay? And then right here is what they call the promontory. So this is the promontory, and these are the anterior sacral foramens, where the spinal cord passes through, basically. Yeah. The branches of the spinal cord pass through the anterior, and then, of course, remember, as I mentioned, if there's an anterior, there's definitely a posterior, which we will get to appreciate when we get to see the posterior part of it. So I think that's it, like literally. I think that's basically it about the anterior aspect, right? So let's look at the posterior aspect of the sacral bone. So here, right here, remember as I mentioned that these bones are five vertebrate bones that fuse together during ossification, ossification, and then they become one large bone. So the spinous processes fuse to give us the median sacral crest, and this is the intermediate sacral crest, and this becomes our lateral sacral crest. Another fascinating thing about this bone is it has an opening here, which is called the sacral canal. So the sacral canal opens to is an opening all the way to the sacral hiatus. And if you know the word hiatus in anatomy, it just simply means opening. I don't know which language that is again. And anterior sacral foramens. Now, if we have an anterior, we expect a posterior. So this becomes our posterior sacral foramens. These ones, okay? Which open up to the nerves that, the nerve roots that supply the posterior aspect of the pelvis, right? Some also do move to the anterior, but anyway, yeah. And then these here, these two here, are our superior articular processes, which have the superior articular facets. And down here, we have our, down here, we have our sacral conus, okay? And I think that's oh, of course, and then not forgetting the sacral tuberosity. From there, I think that's about it. And then from there, we need to look at the coccyx. So the coccyx has three distinct features. The three things that we can talk about. Basically, besides the very cute shape, I think it's very cute, but besides the cute shape, we have the transverse processes, which are these articulations that are here. And then we have these things that are looking like teeth. I don't know, vampire teeth, upside down vampire teeth. Yeah, they're practically called conus, and they attach to this. They contribute to the attachment of the sacrococcyx joint. And I think that's about it. That's about the skeletal structure of the pelvis. So I will be so excited to hear from you guys and tell me how to improve, how to make my videos better. But what did you think about the first video? I'm so excited. I had fun doing this. There were a lot of takes, but I enjoyed it. I loved sharing it with you guys, and I'm sure it will help me remember for my exam on Tuesday. Have a blessed day. I can't wait for you guys to tell me how to improve and where I did great and where I can do better. Till next time.